So in this chapter, we will be talking about chemical equilibrium. But before I'm going to proceed with the definition of chemical equilibrium, let us first differentiate the two kinds of reaction, the irreversible and reversible chemical reactions. Now, there are chemical reactions that are irreversible, meaning um, when you produce the products, then eventually the chemical reaction ended. So these are the typical reactions that involves formation of precipitate, like evolution of gas, or it could be combustion. So for example, if you have a fuel and then it will combust, eventually the fuel will dissipate and then there will be combustion. And then all of the reactants uh, will no longer be available. And thus we say that the reaction is completed. Now, if your products in a certain chemical reaction, when they're not actually removed from the vessel, sometimes chemical reaction will proceed to a reversible chemical reaction. So when the product is not removed in your reacting medium, the products that are formed in your chemical reaction, they react themselves again and then forms your reactant. So this one is what you call reversible chemical reaction. If this happens, when there is a reversible chemical reaction, you would form what you call as chemical equilibrium. So consider, for example, formation of your nitrogen dioxide coming from your dinitrogen tetroxide at room temperature. Now, looking at this one, your dinitrogen tetroxide is actually colorless. And then, as you leave that one in your vessel, take note that the vessel is being closed here. It decomposes to your brown nitrogen dioxide, this one here. Wait. So this one is your nitrogen oxide, that's the product. And then the nitrogen tetroxide, this one is your colorless. Now, if we're going to um, leave this container closed, okay, it's a closed system, eventually the products that are formed here will form again your dinitrogen tetroxide. So in that case, what you can see in the vessel is a light brown. This means that your product has already formed in this scenario. Okay. So let me just repeat that. From colorless, it turns into a brown until such time that the dark brown becomes light brown. This will tell you that here in this condition, your chemical reaction is already proceeding into a reversible one. If not, then you will not see this light brown coloration. What you can see only is that there will be a little by little, there will be a dissipation of your colorless substance, and then you will form your brown colored gas. Eventually, if you let this vessel closed, okay, then you will see your light brown coloration of gas. At some time, the color stops changing, and we can see that the vessel becomes a light brown. Okay, so here. So this happens because by the time that the nitrogen dioxide is produced, again, it will produce back your dinitrogen tetroxide here, which is actually colorless. So when you combine the two colors, then that means there would be a light brown formation. So this kind of event is what you call reversible chemical reaction. Okay, so if we're going to define reversible chemical reaction, this is a chemical reaction in which the products can regenerate the original reactants. In theory, all chemical reactions are actually reversible. However, some reactions are reversible on their own, others are only reversible if we're going to restrict their conditions, or others are not yet discovered on how to reverse their chemical reaction. So for example, if you're going to dissolve, for example, yung sodium chloride, your sodium chloride releases your sodium and your chloride ions. Eventually, if you're going to get rid of your water there, you're going to recover again your NaCl. So basically, what we're talking is that when you're going to let your reactants or the all the chemical species in your vessel will stay there, eventually this will lead to a reversible chemical reaction. So the concept of equilibrium is that whenever there is a chemical reaction, take note that the chemical reaction will proceed at different rates. From your collision theory, I think that was in chapter 4, we we have learned that the rate of your chemical reaction is actually directly proportional to the concentrations of your reacting species. So for example, if your reaction, so it will produce the rate of chemical reaction to produce a product is K, okay, that the rate is equal to K times the concentration of the products. This one is for your forward reaction. Whenever you have a reversible chemical reaction, we're talking about two rates here, the rate of the forward reaction and the rate of the reverse reaction. So when you say reverse reaction, this means that this is another K times the concentration of your reactants. Okay, so the forward reaction is that from reactants, you produce your products. And then the reverse reaction is that from products, you produce your reactant. And each of these chemical reaction proceeds at different rates. Take note that they are dependent on the concentration of the substances. At the same time, it's dependent on the temperature. We've also learned that from our previous chapter. So in which the reaction takes place and also at the pressure at which the reaction plays, especially when we'll be talking about gases or if the reacting species or the chemical species in your reaction vessel is or are gases. So in general, the reaction rate is actually proportional to the concentration as defined by our collision theory, okay, in the reaction rates. So in a reversible reaction, there are two rates to observe, the rate of the forward reaction and the rate of the reversible reaction. Whenever there is a chemical equilibrium, this is a point in which the rate of the forward reaction will equal to the rate of the reverse reaction. Now, what does that mean? Take note that we're talking about rates. So how fast the products are formed and how fast the reactants are formed. So when these two rates becomes equal, then we would say that the chemical reaction is already at equilibrium. Another concept of chemical equilibrium is that in terms of its concentration. So in a chemical equilibrium, this is also a point in which the concentration of the reactants in the products remains equal. Logically, this is correct because the rates are equal and so the concentration remains constant. Take note, it's not equal, but it is constant. It remains constant. Take note that when you talk about concentration in a chemical reaction, it is always stoichiometric. So take note that here, for example, this is 1 mole of dinitrogen tetroxide will form 2 moles of your nitrogen dioxide. So there would be, since there is an equal rate, so the formation of your 2 moles of nitrogen dioxide is now equal to the formation of your dinitrogen tetroxide on the other hand. So once equilibrium is achieved, the amount remains constant. Take note again that the amount are not equal, but they are forming in a constant rate. So as you can see here, for example, this is in terms of concentration. So we started 0 for our nitrogen dioxide, which is our product. And then eventually this is the point at equilibrium in which the concentration is forming at the same rate. So it remains constant. On the other hand, here we have high concentration of your reactant eventually is leads to decreasing amount because we are producing the product at this time until such time that there is an equilibrium in which the two reactants becomes constant. Take note, the concentrations are not equal, but they are constant. So, as we define chemical equilibrium, converting it into a mathematical expression, it is defined as a reversible chemical reaction at a fixed temperature and in a state of equilibrium. The product of the molar concentrations of the substances, take note, it's in molarity concentration of the substances, form the reaction divided by the product of the molar concentrations of the reactants raised to the power indicated by the number of molecules or ions in the balance equation. Now, what does that mean? So when your chemical reaction is now in equilibrium, if it is in equilibrium, this means that your um your rate is constant, your rate is equal, and your concentrations are constant, raised to the power of the um raised to the power which is located in their balanced equation. Okay, so to fully understand those things, we need to look into the how do we convert our chemical equilibrium concept into a chemical equilibrium mathematical equation. So before that, in summary, when we talk about chemical equilibrium, these are opposing reactions that occur at equal rates. Take note, this is a dynamic process. It never stops. Unlike our irreversible chemical reaction, the concentrations are constant. The rates of the forward and reverse reactions are equal, and equilibrium can be reached from either direction, either reactants or products. So start from the reactants, you produce your product, and then if there are products that are formed, then it will produce your reactant, then equilibrium can be reached. Whenever there's a disruption of your equilibrium, whether it's in the reactant side or in the product side, then basically it will produce a dynamic chemical reaction until such time equilibrium again is reached. So as mentioned, you have what you call as equilibrium expression. This equilibrium expression would lead us to the concept of equilibrium constant. So no matter what the starting composition of reactants and products, the same ratio of the concentration is achieved at equilibrium. So in general, if you have a chemical reaction A plus B forming P and Q, if you're going to form an expression from that, take note that the first thing that you have to do is balance your equation. Okay, of course, because an equation is useless when it is not balanced because it does not follow the law of conservation of mass. So when your equation is balanced, then there is an equality in your chemical reaction. So how are we going to make an expression out from this chemical reaction? According to what is stated a while ago, chemical equilibrium will occur when the concentration of your products are in constant raised to the power of the coefficients in your balance equation. So for example, this one is your product, the P and the Q, their concentration signified by a bracket raised to the power of the coefficients in your balance equation. Okay. So the rate the rate of the forward reaction is actually K times the concentration of the products raised to the power of their coefficients. While if you have the rate of the reverse reaction, that's equal to the K, that's the constant of the reverse reaction raised to the power of your reactant species raised to the power of their coefficients in the balance equation. Okay, now take note, you have two rates here, the rates of the forward and the rate of the reverse reaction. Take note that these are equal at equilibrium. So all in all, we can actually combine these two K into what we call as the equilibrium constant. So the equilibrium constant here is actually a combination of the constant of the forward and the reverse reaction. So this concept is derived from the law of mass action by Godberg and Wag. So the equilibrium constant, what does that mean? So a K is constant for the reaction. It is regardless of the starting chemical of the concentration of your starting species. So whatever is the concentration, your K is the same. So it's constant. So whether you have your starting point is 5 grams or 10 grams, it all follows that the reaction is stoichiometric. So when you have a 5 gram, if it will produce your 5 gram and it will produce your 5 gram product, then if you have a 10 gram, that will also produce a 10 gram product. So take note again, this depends on stoichiometry, not on mechanism. So mechanism is when we talk about how does the product is formed. It doesn't talk about that. But how much is the product is formed? That's stoichiometry. So your K constant is a value that follows stoichiometry, not on how the products or how it reach the the products in your chemical reaction. Now, take note that water or other pure solvent is not included if the reactant and the product concentrations are low. Okay, so they are not considered as part of your K expression. So let's have an example for a while. Your K constant, Kc, or some of the books will signify it as K equilibrium. That's equilibrium constant. That's based on molarities of reactants and products at equilibrium. When you have, for example, when you have a chemical reaction that is gases, you can actually use your pressure. If you remember your Daltons, oh, we have not discussed yet the gases, but according to Dalton, whatever is the concentration of your products, whatever is the concentration of your gases in a mixture, it has also the same composition or ratio to its pressure. So in chemical equilibrium constant, there is no unit. And note that the expression is products over reactants. So it's the product that is in the numerator side, and then you have the denominator is the reactant. Okay, so just a quick test. How are you going to write the K expression of this, for example? So here, an example is your nitrogen gas and your hydrogen gas will produce your ammonia. So this is a combination reaction. So when we write our K expression for this one, oops, our K expression would be, you have here, oops, you have here K equilibrium or Kc. C means concentration. Okay, the molarity of your products, that's your ammonia raised to the power of 2. Okay, and then over, you have your hydrogen gas raised to the power of 3 multiplied by nitrogen gas raised to the power of 1. So we don't place 1 here. Now, this is what you call as your K equilibrium expression. Okay, this is the mathematical equivalent of your chemical equilibrium of this chemical reaction. Now, how about this one? So here we have 2 and then we have 1 here. So when we write our K equilibrium, then products, that's NO2, raised to the power of 2, raised to the power of the coefficient over your N2O4 raised to the power of 1. Okay, and lastly, here we have, okay, take note, this one are pure solids. So here, KEQ, is equal to products, the concentration of your oxygen gas, and then your sodium and your sodium oxide are not part of your K expression. Now, this is because your pure solid and your pure liquids, okay, their activity is equal to 1. And that means that 1 over 1. So let's just take that away from the equation, and then the final K expression is just equal to oxygen raised to the power of 1. Oops. Sorry, we have not balanced our equation yet. Let me check this one. We have, oops. Okay, we forgot to balance our chemical equation here. So you have here, oops. Why? We have here 2. Mm, this one is 2. That's balanced. Nevertheless, is this the same? Okay, KEQ is equal to your oxygen gas. So this means that when when your chemical reaction is already at equilibrium, then you form your oxygen gas. No matter how much you add your sodium oxide, or how much you remove your sodium in your reacting vessel, it does not affect its equilibrium because the equilibrium is only influenced by the oxygen gas. Okay? Yeah. So how do we interpret K, which is basically might be asked in some of the questions. So when your equilibrium constant is larger than 1, this means that since your chemical expression is react products over reactants, so this means that your K is directly proportional to your products while it is inversely proportional to your reactants. So since it's a ratio of products to reactants, sorry, therefore the larger the K, the more products are present at equilibrium. Conversely, if smaller the K, that means more reactants are present at equilibrium. So it's inversely proportional to your reactants while it's directly proportional to your products. So if it's so much greater than 1, this means that there there's a little amount of your reactant in that particular chemical reaction. Okay. Or if the K is very, very small, then the reactants dominate at the equilibrium, and this means that only very few products are formed in that particular chemical reaction. Okay, so in summary, when your K is so greater than 1, essentially, these are all products, and it lies to the right. And I would say this is almost um, a, an irreversible chemical reaction. While on the other hand, if your product is a little bit more than 1, so this we can say that this is a chemical reaction wherein a product is favored. Or if it's less than 1, then its reactant is favored. Or it's very, very small, then essentially it's all reactants. That means it lies to the left, or it has a little amount of your product. Okay, so if you have a small K, then that means the reaction is mostly reactants. If you have a bigger K, the reaction is mostly products. Intermediate, then there would be a mixture of your amount of your reactant and your product. Now, let's also study the difference between a homogeneous and heterogeneous equilibria. So when we say homogeneous equilibria, the equilibrium status of your chemical reaction is composed of um, chemical species that are on the same state. They are in a single phase. So for example, here you have the nitrogen and the oxygen, the nitrogen and the hydrogen gas, and you also have ammonia that is a gas. So all of them are gases. So we call this homogeneous equilibria. So in this case, when you have all gases, we can actually use K pressure here. So in this K expression, we can also write this as the pressure, the partial pressure of your ammonia raised to the power of 2 over the partial pressure of your nitrogen gas raised to the power of 1 times the partial pressure of your hydrogen gas raised to the power of 3. We can use pressure. Now, this we can use because these are all gases, okay, reactants and products in a single phase. On the other hand, when you have, for example, your here, we have solid, we have aqueous. Aqueous means they are dissolved in water. So if you have this one and um, assuming that this is a saturated solution, okay, saturated solution, this means that a maximum amount of your lead chloride is dissolved in your solution, then of course it will form your chemical equilibrium. So in that case, the K expression would be Kc is equal to the concentration of the ions of your lead and your chloride. But take note that your lead chloride is not included in the expression because this one is pure solid. Okay, if it is aqueous, then it's part of your K expression. If it is pure solid or liquid, then it's not part of your equation. So another example is that here you have calcium carbonate and then it produces calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. So in this expression, we can use Kc is equal to the concentration of the carbon dioxide only and not the calcium carbonate and calcium oxide. Now, as I mentioned a while ago, this is also an example wherein if the chemical reaction is already at equilibrium, however you add your calcium carbonate or calcium oxide, it does not affect your chemical equilibrium because that is not part of your chemical equilibrium and only the carbon dioxide is part of it. So the position of a heterogeneous equilibrium does not depend on the amounts of pure solids or pure liquid present because their activities remain constant. Okay, so they don't have concentration. But if you have a pure solid or a pure liquid, it's pure. You don't say I have 10 grams. You don't say a concentration of 10 grams. Concentration is always 10 grams per 1 liter solution. Okay, but if you have pure liquid, you don't have a mixture. You only have a pure substance. So for this reason, the activity of your pure solid or liquid is taken as equal to 1. Okay, so again, the amount of carbon dioxide does not seem to depend on the amounts of calcium oxide and your calcium carbonate if you have your heterogeneous equilibria. Okay. So the amount of carbon dioxide will not depend greatly present. So because your here again, these are all solids and the one that is involved in your chemical equilibrium is only your carbon dioxide. Okay, so again, a little quick test. So what is your K expression for this one? Take note, these are not included. Okay, let's check the balance equation. That's balanced. So Kc is equal to the concentration of carbon dioxide raised to the power of 2 over the concentration of your carbon monoxide raised to the power of 2. So that's your K expression. Okay, now we'll go to the mathematics portion. We're now going to solve our um, different unknowns using our equilibrium constant. Now, since we have our K constant for our chemical reaction, then we can solve actually for different concepts. So it could be we can solve for the amount of the hydrogen. For example, in this one, we can actually solve for the amount of the hydrogen iodide or your hydrogen gas or your iodine gas in equilibrium. But here, you, before you can solve the amounts, then you should have a chemical equilibrium constant given. So it's like it depends on the problem solving. But I guess problem solving in NMAT does not involve computing for the concentration since these needs um, a more complicated mathematical manipulations like logarithm or quadratic equation, and you don't use calculator. But what we can solve is we can also solve for equilibrium constant, the K of your chemical reaction. So for example, um, in this one, we solve for the equilibrium constant. So before we can perform this one, the first thing that you're going to look at is number one, step one, check if your equation is balanced. Okay, so here we have a balanced equation. Second, make your K expression. Okay, so here, how do we make our K expression? These are all gases, so all of them are involved in your equilibrium expression. So this Kc is equal to the concentration of hydrogen gas raised to the power of 1, hydrogen iodine gas raised to the power of 1, over the concentration of Hi, hydrogen iodide raised to the power of 2. Okay, so we now have our K expression. And of course, the third one, check if concentrations are in molarities. Okay, this is very important because here the bracket signifies that it should be in molarities. So since these are all in molarities, now we're ready to substitute. Now you're ready now to compute. So substitute that one in your formula in the expression. So H2 is 1.72, and then your I2 is 1.72, and then your HI is 0.54. Take note, it's raised to the power of 2. Okay, and then we're now ready to answer your problem. Okay, so 1.72 times 1.72 divided by your 0.54 squared. So the Kc is 10.145. Okay, around 10. Okay, so your equilibrium constant is around 10. Now, how do we interpret 10? So since 10 is more than 1, this means that this chemical reaction essentially lies to the right, product side. This is a product-favored chemical reaction. Okay, so here are some exercise that you can actually practice. Okay. Yeah. And then let's go to predicting the direction of reaction. So in predicting the direction of the reaction is that you will be given the same problem in computing for K equilibrium constant, but this time K is given. So you will know that the reaction quotient is given, is the unknown. Okay, because you will be given the K. So when your reaction quotient is smaller than K, this means that your product is still, your reaction is just starting. And this means that in order to make the reaction in equilibrium, it must produce the reaction. So that means it must proceed to the right. When your Q, the reaction quotient, is equal to K, that means the reaction is in equilibrium. Okay, or the reaction quotient is greater than K. Okay, this means that in order to proceed to the equilibrium, then the the reaction must proceed to the left. To the left, going to the reactant side. So if Q is greater, this means that there is now a lot of products being formed, and thus in order for it to to proceed to chemical equilibrium, it must produce the reactant first. Okay, so again, Q means the reaction quotient. So let's have an example. Okay. Again, Q is used in predicting the direction. If Q is less than K, that means it must shift to the right because your Q is smaller than K. If it's smaller, that means there are a lot of reactants pa. That means it has to shift to the right to produce more of your products. When Q is equal to K, that means the chemical reaction is already at equilibrium. Okay, Q is greater, that means there are more products that is being formed, so it must shift to the left in order to produce the chemical equilibrium. Okay? Yan. Ayan, these are all the same concept. So example. So the same concept, your way of solving this one, it's like you're solving for K. Except that you change the expression to Q. So step one, check your equation if it's balanced. So you have one carbon, you have one oxygen there, and then you have four hydrogen. So let's put here two. So that's your balance equation. And then after that, we make our expression. Q is equal to, this time we use Q. Okay, that's equal to your CH3OH. Is this part of the expression? Yes, it's a gas. So that's part. And then carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide raised to the power of 1, and then concentration of hydrogen gas raised to the power of 2. So now this is our expression. Uh, so take note that in problems relating to the prediction of the reaction, it is always that K is given. Or else, you will be the one to solve for K. It's not a Q problem. So, if it's a Q problem, you will know that because K should be given. Because you need to compare Q versus K in the end of the computation. Okay? So next is check if your given is in molarities. So the reaction is placed in a 3-liter vessel and then it's in moles. So it's not yet in molarity. So concentration of your CH3OH is equal to 0.818 moles divided 1 to 3. And then concentration of your CO is equal to 1.402 divided 1 to 3 liters. So it becomes moles per liter. And then concentration of your H2 is equal to 0.3626. That's mole, again, divided 1 to liters. Of course, in NMAT, you will be given simpler numbers. Okay, again, but the concept is very important. Okay, so if you have, for example, 0.818 divided by 3, so our mole here, molarity here is 0.27, and then 1.402 divided by 3. So your molarity here is 0.47, and then 0.3626 divided by 3. Your molarity here is 0.12 molar. And then we're now ready to substitute. Your CH3 is 0.27. Divide that one to your CO, which is 0.47 times 0.12 raised to the power of 2. Okay, let's check our Q. So we have here 0.47 times 0.12 squared, and then 0.27 divided by, so the answer is 40. Okay, Q is 40 while K is 1.6. So 40 is very much greater than 1.6. So what does that mean? There is a greater Q. And because of that, where should be the direction of the shift of the equilibrium? It should be maraming products. So that means it will shift to the left or in the reactant side in order for it to achieve your equilibrium. Okay, so that's the concept of the reaction quotient or your Q. Okay, now let's go to the very important concept of chemical equilibrium called the Le Chatelier's principle. So Le Chatelier's principle is actually a concept on when an equilibrium is disturbed. Okay, disturbing an equilibrium. The question is here is that where will the equilibrium shift if you're going to disturb um, your chemical reaction that is already in equilibrium? So there are a lot of stresses that is emphasized in Le Chatelier's principle. The first one is, of course, your concentration. So either reactant or product concentration changes. Next is pressure. And then next is temperature. So take note that the presence of catalyst, inert gases, pure solid, and pure solvents will not affect the equilibrium condition. Okay, now let's go to the changes in reactant or the product. Well, will the reaction shift? So adding a reactant or a product will shift the equilibrium away from the increase. So for example, if we have nitrogen gas plus hydrogen gas forming your ammonia, if we're going to balance this equation, this one is 2 and this one is 3, right? Okay, so what if I'm going to add more of your ammonia? So according to Le Chatelier's principle, if you're going to add either a reactant or a product, so in this case, in this example, you're adding a product, this will shift the equilibrium away from the increase. So since the increase is in product side, then the shift will go to the left. So it will shift to the left because the increase is in the product side. Now, what if I'm going to increase your nitrogen gas? So since the increase is in the reactant side, then there will be a shift to the right here because the addition is in the reactant side. The reverse is true. If we're going to remove your ammonia here, if we're going to remove that one, and if we want to produce more of your ammonia, then since there are no longer ammonia in your equilibrium, there will be a shift to the right. So so that more of the ammonia will be produced because you remove the ammonia in this case. Okay, so a decrease in the reactant or either in the reactant or in the product side, the shift will go to the decrease. If you're going to increase, then the shift will be away from the increase. So that is how you treat your relief of stress when there is a changes in the concentration. Next is your uh, so this reaction or product um, effect. Next is the effect of volume and pressure. Now take note that the effect of pressure is only when you have gases. Okay, um we don't use or pressure will not affect your equilibrium, for example, in aqueous solution. So since these are not gases, then it's not affected by pressure. Pressure again are affected only, okay, this affects only gases. Now, according to Le Chatelier's principle, that if pressure is increased, it will shift to counteract the increase. So before you're going to look into the changes in the or the shift in the equilibrium, you have to check the amount of moles in your reactant in the product side. So here, there's 1 mole here, and then add that one to the 3 moles, then there would be a total of 4 moles in the reactant. And then here you have 2 moles in the product side. Okay? So, whenever there is an increase in the pressure, take note that when you increase the pressure, everybody is affected because this is just in one vessel. Okay? So since this is in one vessel, so when you increase the pressure, then everybody is affected, but the question is where is the shift? So whenever there's an increase in pressure, it will shift to the lesser amount of moles. Okay? So this means that the shift will be, if there is an increase in pressure in this chemical reaction, then there will be a shift to the left. Okay, bakit sa left? Because it has a lesser amount of moles. Whenever there is a decrease in pressure naman, you decrease the pressure, then there will be a shift to the, oh, sorry. The lesser amount is to the right, sorry. Okay, here is the right. Okay, so whenever we decrease the pressure, the shift will go to the higher number of moles, which is the left side, the reactant side. Okay, so a decrease in pressure will shift to the reactant side because it has the higher number of moles. If there is an increase in pressure, then it will shift to the lower number of moles. So it will shift to the right. And take note that when we'll be talking about gases, pressure and volume are inversely proportional. Okay, proportional, which will be our next chapter on gases. So this is according to Boyle's law. So according to Boyle's law, at constant temperature, whenever there is an increase in pressure, since inverse man, there would be a decrease in volume. So ibig sabihin, volume changes can also affect just like pressure. So whenever there is an increase in pressure, there would be a corresponding decrease in volume. Or if you have a decrease in pressure, then that means there is an increase in volume. So whenever there is a decrease in volume, it will shift to the lesser number of moles, which is to the right. If there is an increase in volume, then there would be, the shift will be going to the higher number of moles, which is to the left. So that is the um, changes in your Le Chatelier's principle. Okay, next is the effect of temperature. So the effect of temperature changes will depend on what type of chemical reaction are we having in the given. Take note, there are two types of chemical reaction, the endothermic reaction and the exothermic reaction. So by definition, when we say endothermic reaction, this means that in a chemical reaction, heat is absorbed by the system or by the reacting species. And then when this is an exothermic reaction, that means the heat is released. Okay, this is released by the system. Okay, so the heat is released by your chemical species in your chemical reaction. So that whenever there is an endothermic reaction, treat your heat as part of the reactant side. Whenever heat is released, treat heat as part of the product side. Okay, so for example, A plus B will have your C here, and if it is an endothermic reaction, you add heat here. If it is an exothermic reaction, example, so A plus B forming C, you add your heat in the product side, a release of heat. Okay, so a release of heat is exothermic. If heat is absorbed, heat is reaction is endothermic, so heat will be part of the reactant side. After you place the heat position of heat, now treat that as like your concentration changes. What does that mean? Example, if I'm going to cool down the vessel, okay, what does it mean? That means you decrease heat. If you decrease heat in an endothermic reaction, that means you decrease heat, then the shift will be shift to the left. Take note, you decrease heat. Okay? And the heat is in the reactant side. So the shift will be to the reactant side. Now, what will happen if it's an exothermic reaction? In an exothermic reaction, heat is in the product side. So when you cool down the vessel, that means you remove heat in the vessel. Then the shift here is shift to the right, going to the product side because it's an exothermic reaction. And the reverse is true. If we're going to heat the vessel, so there will be an increase in heat. Of course, there will be an increase in heat. So the chemical equilibrium will shift to the right. Okay. If there is an increase in heat and then in an exothermic reaction, this means that you add more heat in the product side, then the shift will go to the left, which is your reactant side. Okay, so that's the effect of stresses on chemical equilibrium. Let's have a quick test. Okay, so here's the given. Make sure you balance your chemical reaction. So you have SO2, 2, there'll be 2S, and then of course you have 6 oxygen. Okay, the reaction is the delta heat is less than 0. So that means it's an exothermic reaction. Okay, if the delta heat is negative, that exothermic, let's just go back a little. Take note, this one. This is an exothermic reaction. Here, this is an exothermic. If the delta heat is positive, then it's an endothermic reaction. Okay. Now let's go back to our exercise. So this one is an exothermic reaction. So if it's an exo, that means your heat is found here. Okay. Now, what happens if oxygen is added? There is an addition of oxygen. So where is the reaction shift? Here, there's an addition of oxygen. So the shift will be going to the right. Okay. The reaction is heated. Heated means there is an addition of heat. Okay, so where will be the shift? Then it's in the left side. What if the container is doubled? So let's try to check the gases here. This is 1, 2, a total of 3 moles in your reactant side, and you have 2 moles in the product side. So the volume of container is doubled, so there is an increase in volume. So if there's an increase in volume, there would be a decrease in pressure. Decrease in pressure will go to the higher number of moles. So that means it is to the left side. Okay, what if SO3 is removed? We remove the SO3, so our reaction will shift to the right in order for you to replenish what is removed, which is actually your SO3. Okay, now, what if the question is, what if catalyst is added? Catalyst is added. The answer here is no effect. Now, what is the reason why your catalyst, if you remember our lesson, catalyst increases the rate. And in equilibrium, we're talking about rates. But why is that the catalyst addition has no effect in your chemical equilibrium? Okay. It is because whenever there is an increase in the rate of the forward reaction, the catalyst will immediately form your product. At the same time, when the product is formed faster, this means that the reactant will also produce faster. So there would be no effect because the rate of the forward reaction is increased. At the same time, the rate of the reverse reaction is also increased. And that's the reason why your catalyst has no effect. Now, what if your equation is, let me just erase this one. Okay. Now, what if the given is your calcium carbonate, for example, and then forming your calcium oxide plus oxygen gas? Okay, if a balanced equation, that's already balanced. So this is solid. If you remember, this is solid, and this one is gas. What is the effect if we're going to add calcium carbonate? Increase the concentration of carbonate. What is the answer? The answer is no effect. Okay, why? Because in equilibrium, it's only the oxygen gas that is involved. So that means whatever changes in the calcium oxide or changes in the calcium carbonate, it has no effect in your equilibrium. Again, because it's only the oxygen gas. But if it is the oxygen gas that is stressed out, it's either removed or added, then that means there is a shift in the chemical reaction. Okay, so we'll stop there for part one, and then we will continue with the equilibrium of acids and bases. Thank you.